Hi, Jason with Tormach. In this video, we're going to cover how to install your 1300PL plasma table. First off, let me say thank you for supporting our business. At Tormach, we are here to help people make things. As a 100% employee-owned business, we strive to be your high-value source for capable and affordable manufacturing equipment. Whether it's a CNC plasma table, mill, lathe, wood router, or even an automatic bandsaw, we can help you build out the ideal solution for your shop. We recommend you read the operator manual that came with your product for all the warnings, cautions, the safety overview, general site and space requirements, and electrical requirements. The operator manual will also show you what tools you will need to install your machine and to cover each step in full detail. The 1300PL was packaged to allow the machine to be delivered on a liftgate truck. No need for a forklift. When your machine arrives, make sure you visually inspect it. We see less than 1% of our machines get damaged in transit, but in that unfortunate scenario, it is best to reject the shipment. At a minimum, the driver will need to document the damage on the bill of lading and sign it. But once the machine is safely off the truck and inside your shop, we'll want to position it towards the center of the room, at least 8 feet from a wall. Now, let's get this thing opened up. The crate is held together with some metal tabs and some screws along the bottom edge. We can open these up by using a screwdriver or chisel and a pair of pliers. It's easy enough to pry it up and then just straighten it out with the pliers. Start by removing the top panel. Now remove the screws from the bottom edge, and then you can remove one of the sides. This will allow you to slide the remaining 3 sides off as one piece, making the crate easier to handle. Now we can move to unpacking all the pieces. We just need to cut the tie downs and the plastic wrap off of everything and set it aside. Now that we have everything unpacked, let's get the machine off the pallet. Using our pallet jack, we're going to raise the machine up high enough to allow our engine hoist to slide underneath it. To accomplish this, we just use some wood blocking on the sides of the machine as well as on the pallet jack to be able to raise up the machine higher. With the engine hoist, you're going to need to extend the arm out all the way. On ours, we had it set out to the half-ton position, and we shortened the chain on the end of the boom as short as we could get it. Position the engine hoist at the center of the machine and secure a lift strap to the machine. Lift the machine just high enough to take the weight off. Using an 8mm Allen wrench, go ahead and loosen the top socket head cap screws. You can remove one from each side to start. So once the top ones are out, we got to remove the bottom bolts. This is a 14mm Allen wrench to remove these. If you don't have one of these laying around, a life hack for you is to use a bolt with a 14mm head. If you add a couple nuts to the end of it and lock them together, you can just use this to remove those bolts. Then remove the socket heads cap screws located at the top. The pallet is designed to withstand the rigors of shipping, so we're going to need to use a pry bar to get the machine off the lower mounting points. Raise the plasma table a few inches. And once it's free, we'll go ahead and slide the pallet out of the way. All right, so now we can get the machine down on these 4x4 blocks and let's get the legs installed. When we set the machine on the 4x4 blocking, we want to continue to support it with the engine hoist itself, so make sure you keep tension on that lifting strap and on the machine. We're going to remove the cover plates from the end of the machine to access the leg mounting locations. We're going to need a 2.5mm Allen wrench for this. We can remove the shipping bolts from the top of each leg. The location at which we install the legs is important. You'll find labels on each leg and on the table. We'll need to match these up and get the top 2 legs installed. We're going to use a 14mm Allen wrench for this. Now we can lower the table down onto the feet. So we're going to use the engine hoist to support the machine, and we're going to start to lower it down slowly and allow the engine hoist to slide backwards as we lower it down. Once the machine is on its feet, we can move the engine hoist to the opposite side and install the remaining 2 legs. For additional strap clearance, while we're lifting this, we can slide the water table to its forward position. We'll just need a 6mm Allen wrench for this. Then we can reinstall the bolts we removed to secure the table in this forward position. So now we can lift up the other side of the table with the engine hoist and a strap. On these final 2 legs, there's 2 mounting nuts that are used to hold the machine to the pallet. We're going to need to go ahead and remove these But we do not want to discard the Allen bolt. We're going to use this to mount the legs of the machine, making sure to match up the labels again. Once we have the leg bolts tightened up, we can go ahead and lower the machine back down and get it on all 4 feet and test the water table with your shop dog. On to leveling the machine. We will do this in 2 steps. First, we will level the machine itself, and then we'll level the water table. To level the machine, we're going to place the spirit level on the X and Y directions on all 4 sides of the machine. And we're going to find which sides are low. We're going to use the machine feet to raise up the low sides until everything is level. We're just going to verify this by placing the level on all 4 sides again. And then once this is complete, we can go ahead and tighten the jam nuts on the feet. Leveling, or really rather aligning the water table, is done using the Z-axis. This ensures that the working surface of the machine is parallel with the machine's travels. So the water table is supported by 2 adjusting rails, and each of these rails has 2 grub screws that can help you adjust the height. So the first thing we're going to do is just check the height of the table. We're going to do this by pushing the machine to the corners of the travel, and we're going to use a tape measure or a ruler, and we're going to measure from the water table to a reference point on the Z-axis. We're going to note this dimension, then we're going to push the machine into each corner of travel. Now the 1300PL comes standard with torch height control, which will compensate for small variations in your workpiece heights. You can expect the machine to perform well with the table that is level within 1/4 of an inch. The closer you get, the better it works, but you don't have to worry about making it perfect. If an adjustment is needed, we can loosen the bolts on the mounting rails. We can then use the 2 grub screws on each rail to raise the low side of the water table up to get everything level. We're going to go ahead and remeasure our heights and then continue adjusting as needed until we are within our 1/4 of an inch. Just take a lap under here.
Yeah. Well, you got to move the dog around with you to put your head on it.
Right.
The screws.
Onto the side panels. We need to install the front and rear panels first. The 2 side panels actually overlap these. We will need 4 M8 button head cap screws and a 5mm Allen wrench to put these on. Okay, so now we've got the front and rear on, we can move to the left side. We're actually going to leave the right side off until later. This left panel is going to overlap the front and rear panels, and it's also secured with 4 M8 button head cap screws. We're going to take 2 more of these M8 button head screws and we're going to get them started in the middle holes. Now we can take the cable track mounts and we can hang them on these 2 M8 screws and tighten these up. We will need to flip the front 2 bump stops on the Y-axis around. So we'll go ahead and remove the rubber bump stop, and we'll take the socket head cap screws out of this and just turn this bracket around. And then we'll reinstall the rubber bumper. So now we're going to go grab the cable track and we're going to remove the top cover. Now we can mount the tray to the 2 brackets we just installed using the 4 M6 screws that are pre-installed in it. So let's grab the electrical cabinet now and get it unwrapped. We'll remove the M6 screws that are pre-installed in it, and we'll use those to mount it to the bottom of the cable tray. While we're installing this, we want to leave one of the screws out that's closest to the rectangular cutout. We're going to attach a ground wire to this. Now we can unwrap the cable guard that's bundled on the left side of the machine. We're going to lay this all down and pass the cables through the rectangular cutout. We'll mount this cable guard down using 4 M6 socket head cap screws. To keep things easy, let's move to installing the torch and the plasma leads now. We can start this by installing the torch breakaway plate. Remove the Allen bolt from the Z-axis and insert the cable loop into the slot, and then just reinstall the bolt. This will catch your torch in case it gets knocked off the Z-axis. Now, let's open up the cable guard by removing all these link covers. A flat base screwdriver works well for this. When we get to the loop back portion here, just pick a convenient spot to remove covers from both sides so we can patch the torch leads through the cable guard. So now open up your plasma unit and place the power supply at the back left corner of the machine. Let's grab the torch lead and set it on the bench. We'll need to remove this brass gear from the torch body. Depending on which torch and plasma unit you purchase, this may be a little different. The unit we have is a PowerMax 65, and for this one we need to take this threaded body and separate it, and then we can slide the gear out. On a PowerMax 45, you just need to take 2 little small screws out and the gear will slide out. It's easiest to put your torch consumables in now, so that when we install the torch onto the machine, we can get the height set right away. We didn't do this in the video, but in hindsight, it would have been a little bit easier. You want to follow Hypertherm or your torch manufacturer's recommendations when you install the consumables. So now we can install the torch body into the breakaway holder. We only want to tighten the screws on this just enough to keep the torch from falling out. There's no cutting pressure here, and these torch houses are made from ceramic, so we don't want to over-tighten them. While we are here, let's go ahead and pull out the Ohmic probing wire that is tucked inside the X-axis motor housing. We can install the Ohmic probe wire quick, and then we can route the torch leads through the cable guard. As we're installing the wires in the cable guard, it is good practice to keep the wires from crisscrossing each other. This will reduce wear on the cables as the machine traverses around. When we transition from the X-axis cable guard to the Y-axis cable guard, we don't want to run the torch leads through this step section. This does not offer enough clearance for the torch leads and will cause premature failure. Once we get down to the bottom of the Y-axis, we can pass the lead through that rectangular cutout and then route it back to the plasma power supply and plug it in. We can grab the grounding strap that came with your plasma unit, we can plug it into the power supply, and then we can pass it underneath the side of the machine and just pass it back up to the water table. Now we can install the Hypertherm control cable. This ships with the machine and plugs into the round connector at the back of the plasma power supply and into the number 11 position on your machine's electrical cabinet. Now we can wrap up the torch installation by reinstalling all the cable guard link covers. You can press these on by hand by starting on one side and then kind of clipping them over on the other side. You may also find a flat blade screwdriver to be helpful for this task. Since we're finished running all the wires through the cable guards, it's a good time to reinstall that tray cover. So we're going to need to route the e-stop cable and reset button cable through the rectangular hole. We'll need to attach this ground wire to the screw we left off earlier. Then we can reinstall this top cover with 4 M4 socket head cap screws. The 2 longer screws are installed on the inside of the cover. While we're at the control cabinet, let's finish up the rest of these connections. The wires all have number labels on them, and they correspond with the positions on the electrical cabinet. We'll put the diagram on the screen here for you, but it can also be found in the connectors reference section of your manual. There's one more ground wire. We need to pass through the side panel cutout and install it on the machine's ground block located underneath the table. We are almost finished. Just a few more steps and we can get the machine powered up. The machine arm holds the controller, the monitor, the keyboard, the USB hub. This is where we're going to be interacting and interfacing with the machine. We can install this on either the left side or the right side. The left side is the standard position, and if this works with the space that you have, it's best to just install it here. In our space, if we put it on the left side, we'd be blocking our door, so we're going to go ahead and move it to the right side. We can then mount the keyboard tray and the monitor. You're going to want to make sure that you mount the VESA mount for your controller before you mount the monitor. As you can see in the video, I put the monitor on, and then I realized I'd take it back off quick and reinstall it. So go ahead and slide that in there ahead of time. The controller mounts to this bracket using these little eye bolts and slides into place with a friction fit against the rubber feet. We can now plug in the keyboard, the mouse, the hub, and the Ethernet cable. We're going to route the Ethernet and power wires down the arm and in through the panel cutouts and all the way back to the electrical cabinet. We do have some cable trays located underneath the machine to help with the wire routing. Now we can plug the Ethernet cable into the back of the control cabinet, and the monitor and controller power cords will plug into the IEC ports labeled Accessory Power Port. Now that everything is hooked up, we can go ahead and install the right side panel of the machine. One quick check before we do this is to make sure that the water table's drain valve is installed and in the closed position. Filling the water tank with an open drain valve is not an ideal scenario. For this, we're going to use 4 more M8 button head cap screws and a 5mm Allen wrench. We can go ahead and reinstall the end plates on the machine. Now let's get those slats installed and fill the water table up. Installing the slats in a curve helps them last longer and can more effectively support your parts when you're cutting. To do this, we're just going to offset the center of the slats by 1 position. The water table holds 59 gallons of water, and you can use a hose or buckets, just get the thing filled up. We recommend adding a plasma cutting fluid to the water to help stop corrosion. Something like green cut can work really well. Follow the manufacturer's instructions on how to mix this. When we're filling the table, we want to fill it to about a ½ inch below the top of the slats. The water table is a critical safety feature on your 1300PL. It will trap the majority of the metal particulates that are released when you're cutting, and will help keep your shop's air quality a lot cleaner. You want to make sure and keep the water table at the proper levels when you're cutting. Let's get the machine up and running and verify the installation. First, we're going to open the electrical cabinet and we're going to verify that all the circuit breakers are in the on position. Then we're going to need to verify the electrical service meets the machine's requirements. We're looking for 230 volts, single phase power on a 20 amp circuit. Plug the machine in and turn the main disconnect switch on that is located on the front of the electrical cabinet. Once this thing starts to boot, we can work through the on-screen instructions to configure PathPilot operating system. We need to release the emergency stop button, which is done by rotating it, and then we're going to press the blue reset button. The reset button will illuminate, and then we can verify on the status page of the PathPilot interface that the machine OK light will change from yellow to green. At the bottom left of your screen, you'll see a reset button that's flashing blue. Let's go ahead and press this and enable the software. So the first test we're going to do is to verify that the emergency stop button is working. So let's go ahead and push this in. The button should stay in the depressed position. And the blue reset button will turn off and the machine OK light will also turn off. Now let's power down the machine. Press the exit button on the bottom right of the screen. And when prompted, select OK. When the display says it's safe to power off your machine, let's turn the main disconnect switch. We can go ahead and turn it back on, and now the controller should automatically launch back into that PathPilot interface. When it's powered back up, let's go ahead and pull it out of reset again by releasing the emergency stop button, pushing the blue reset, and then pressing the reset button in the PathPilot interface. So next we're going to verify the machine motion. So the first thing we're going to do is reference the machine. On the bottom center of the screen, you're going to see a reference X, Y, Z, and A button. So let's go ahead and start by referencing Z. Reference Y and reference X. The reference position is all the way up in Z, all the way back in Y, and all the way to the left in X. So let's test the jogging of the machine. To do this, we're going to use the keyboard and the arrow keys. If we press the right arrow, the machine should move in the positive X direction to the right. And if we press the left arrow, the machine will move in the negative X direction to the left. If we use the down arrow, the machine is going to move in the negative Y direction and move towards us. And if we use the up arrow, the machine is going to move in the positive Y direction and move away from us. Page down will move the Z axis in the negative direction, and page up will move the Z axis in the positive direction. With the plasma's power supply powered up and the torch consumables installed, we can test fire the torch. There is a test torch button located at the bottom right of the PathPilot interface. This will create a pilot arc. While this arc is lit, we're going to want to check the torch voltage display located at the bottom center of the screen. We need to see a reading above 100 volts, which indicates an open circuit. If we do not see a voltage here, we're going to want to refer to the voltage feedback section of the troubleshooting guide. Your 1300PL plasma is equipped standard with a torch breakaway detection system. This will stop motion in the scenario where your torch runs into a tip up or to a piece of material and gets knocked off of the Z-axis. So we're going to go ahead on the status page again. There is a breakaway switch LED. This should be off. If we go ahead and we pull the torch off of the machine, we will see this light turn on. Let's test the ohmic probing to make sure that this system is working properly. To do this, what we need to do is we just need to check the circuit between the torch tip and the plasma unit itself. we can go ahead and short the torch nose to the table using a piece of scrap metal. If we jump to the status page in PathPilot, we'll see this Ohmic touch light. We just want to see this light turn on when the torch tip is touching the ground. So the Ohmic probing system on your 1300PL relies on a calibrated resistance between the torch cap and the workpiece. You're going to need to calibrate this if you change consumables, if your workpiece has changed. This is one of those settings that you might have to adjust when you're using the machine. Because one of the side effects of this can be is if you start to get water to splash up into your torch nose, it can trigger the probing system. So to calibrate and to adjust this sensitivity, if we open up the electrical cabinet and we can identify the Tormach torch height control board, it's located here, there is a sensitivity adjustment. We can go ahead and short the torch nose to the table using a piece of scrap metal, and then we'll watch the LED number D8 on the bottom left of that board. This should be lit up. This is signaling to the controller that the torch is contacting the workpiece. If the LED is not lit up, let's verify that our workpiece is touching the torch and that the ground clamp is connected. And then we'll go ahead and make an adjustment. When we dial this adjustment to the counterclockwise, it's going to reduce its sensitivity. So if our light is illuminated, it should shut it off. Then we'll go ahead and turn it back to the right until that light just turns on. And then from here, what we can do is we can jog the torch just above a piece of stock, and we'll splash some water on it so that we have the torch touching the water but not the workpiece itself. And what we want to verify is that that probing light does not turn on in this scenario. So your 1300PL plasma cutter is also equipped with a physical probing switch. The combination of the Ohmic probing for your thinner materials, where the weight of the torch and the pressure of the Z-axis moving will bend and deform your sheets and give you inaccurate probing heights, in addition to the mechanical spring-loaded switch that works really well on your thicker materials and doesn't have the drawbacks of the sensitivity to water like an Ohmic probe does. One last step we can take before we start to cut some parts is just verify some settings in the PathPilot controller. So if we go to the main tab and we go down to the MDI line and we type admin, you'll see that all the admin commands start to populate below this. So we're going to type in admin date, and we can either type it in or we can select it out of the list. This allows us to set the date and time on the machine. This is important if we ever have to get into a troubleshooting scenario with you guys. This gives us an accurate date and timestamp on things. You also have optional admin settings to control your keyboard language, as well as calibrating your touchscreen if you need to. So thanks for watching. If you guys enjoy the content, please subscribe to our channel and check out our other YouTube videos here.